The water was bad at the Cecil Hotel. Guests started complaining in early February 2013. The water pressure was low. It was coming out of the taps black for a few seconds, and it tasted funny, sweet, but also kind of awful. A British couple staying there said it was disgusting. They used bottled water to brush their teeth, but they still had to shower in it. On February 19th, a hotel maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez went to check the water tanks on the roof. The Cecil was an old building, a budget hotel on Main Street in downtown Los Angeles, and it had 4 large cylindrical water tanks up there, each about 10 feet tall. They provided the water for the hotel rooms, the kitchen, the coffee shop. Lopez noticed the main tank's hatch was open. That was strange. He got a ladder, climbed up, and looked inside, and that's when he saw her. Elisa Lam was floating in the water, face up. She was naked. Her body was decomposed. He said she looked like she was swimming. Her clothes were in the tank too, at the bottom, covered in a sand-like substance. It was a horrific discovery, and it was the beginning of an answer to a question that had gripped the internet for weeks. Where was Elisa Lam? But the answer just created more questions. Deeper, stranger questions. How did she get in there? Why was she naked? Who closed the heavy lid after her? The Cecil Hotel was already infamous. It had a dark history of suicides and murders. And Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, lived there for a while. So did another serial killer, Jack Unterweger. The place felt cursed to some people. And now this, a young woman dead in a water tank on the roof. It felt like the hotel had claimed another victim. To understand what might have happened, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand who Elisa Lam was. She wasn't from Los Angeles. She was a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada. She was the daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong. By all accounts, she was bright, ambitious, and curious about the world. But she was also struggling. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She documented her struggles on a blog she kept. She wrote about feeling lost, about the crippling effects of her mental illness, about her fear that it would hold her back in life. She wrote things like, "It is a vicious cycle of wanting to be normal." She talked about relapses, about the medication she had to take, and the side effects. Her blog paints a picture of a young woman trying hard to live a full life, but constantly fighting a battle inside her own head. In late January 2013, she decided to take a trip alone, a tour of the west coast of the United States. She called it her West Coast Tour. She took an Amtrak train. She went to San Diego. She visited the zoo. She posted photos. She seemed to be having a good time. On January 26th, she arrived in Los Angeles. She checked into the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil is not the kind of place you stay for luxury. It's cheap. It's in a rough part of town called Skid Row. She was originally booked into a shared hostel-style room, but her roommates reportedly complained about some odd behavior, so the hotel moved her into a private room on the 5th floor by herself. She was supposed to check out on January 31st. That was the day she was scheduled to leave for her next stop, Santa Cruz. She talked to her parents in Canada every single day of her trip, but on January 31st, they didn't get a call. They knew something was wrong immediately. They called the police. The Los Angeles Police Department started an investigation. They searched the hotel, they used sniffer dogs, they went through her room. Her wallet, her ID, her phone, all her things were still there. It was like she just vanished. The dogs could trace her scent in the hotel, even up to a window that led to a fire escape, but then the trail went cold. For days, there was nothing. No sightings, no activity on her credit cards or phone. The police were stumped. So, about 2 weeks into her disappearance, they did something that turned the case from a local missing person report into a global internet phenomenon. They released a video. It was the last known sighting of Elisa Lam. The video was from one of the elevators in the Cecil Hotel, dated January 31st, the day she disappeared. It's about 4 minutes long, and it is deeply unsettling. The footage is grainy, taken from a camera mounted in the top corner of the elevator car. It starts with Elisa entering the elevator. She's wearing a red hoodie over a gray t-shirt, black shorts, and sandals. So she pushes a bunch of buttons on the control panel. Then she waits, but the elevator doors don't close. She steps forward and peeks out into the hallway, looking quickly to her left, then her right. She looks like she's checking if someone is there. She quickly steps back into the elevator, pressing herself against the wall, as if hiding from someone. She moves into the corner right by the control panel, a spot the camera can barely see. The doors are still open. She peeks out again. Then she steps out of the elevator completely. She stands in the hallway. She steps to the side. Then she steps back in front of the open doors, and then she starts making strange movements with her hands. Her arms are stiff. Her fingers are splayed. She moves them around like she's gesturing to someone, or maybe like she's counting or casting a spell. It's not a natural movement. It looks disjointed, almost robotic. She then walks away to the left out of the camera's view. After she's gone, the elevator doors finally close. Then they open again. Then they close again. The video ends. The police released this video hoping someone would recognize her or see something that could help. Instead, it created a firestorm of speculation. Millions of people watched it. They analyzed every frame. What was she doing? Was she playing a game? Was she on drugs? Was she having a psychotic episode? Or was she hiding from someone? A killer? The way she peeks out of the elevator, the way she presses herself into the corner, it looks like fear. It looks like she's trying to get away from a person who is just out of sight of the camera. Maybe that person was holding the elevator door open using the door hold button, which would explain why it didn't close for so long. And then there were the paranormal theories. The Cecil Hotel's dark past fueled this. People said she was talking to a ghost. They said her strange hand movements were unnatural, that she was being controlled by some dark force in the hotel. Some people even claimed the video was tampered with. The timestamp at the bottom is obscured. And there seems to be a cut in the footage, almost a minute of it missing. This led people to believe there was a conspiracy, that the hotel or the police were hiding something. The video was a mystery inside a mystery. It showed a young woman in clear distress, but no one could agree on what was causing it. It was a haunting final image. And for 2 more weeks, that was it. Just the video. The internet was buzzing with theories, but the police had no new leads. Elisa Lam was gone. Meanwhile, back at the Cecil, the water was starting to taste funny. After Santiago Lopez found the body on February 19th, the police and fire department came. Getting her out was difficult. The tank was huge and the opening was small. They couldn't just lift her out without potentially damaging the body, which was evidence. So they had to cut a hole in the side of the massive tank to drain it and retrieve her. They found her clothes in the tank with her. The same clothes she was wearing in the elevator video, the red hoodie, the shorts, the sandals. They also found a room key in her watch at the bottom. The discovery confirmed everyone's worst fears. But it didn't solve the mystery. It deepened it. The biggest question was, how did she even get up there? The roof was supposed to be a restricted area. There were 2 main ways to get there. One was through a locked door that was alarmed. If anyone opened it, an alarm would sound at the front desk. The other way was via a fire escape on the side of the building, but you'd have to climb up from a window, and it was a dangerous climb. And even if she got to the roof, how did she get into the water tank? The tanks were on a raised concrete platform. She would have had to climb a ladder to get to the top of the tank itself. Then, she would have had to open the lid. The lid was a heavy circular metal hatch. It wasn't locked, but it would have been heavy and awkward to lift. And the most puzzling part for many people, if she got in by herself, how did the lid get closed? People imagined she was inside, treading water, and then reached up and pulled the heavy lid closed over her own head, plunging herself into darkness. It sounded impossible. This one detail, the closed lid, fueled the murder theories more than anything else. Surely, someone else must have been there. Someone who put her in the tank and closed the lid on her. The official investigation continued. The coroner performed an autopsy. They were looking for signs of a struggle. Bruises, cuts, any kind of trauma that would suggest she was attacked. They found nothing. No signs of physical assault. They also looked for signs of sexual assault. They found no evidence of that either. They ran a toxicology report to see if she was on drugs. This was a popular theory. Her behavior in the elevator video looked like someone high on something like PCP or bath salts. But the toxicology report came back clean. No alcohol, no illegal drugs. They did find traces of her prescription medication, the drug she took for her bipolar disorder. But the levels were low. This suggested she might have been under-medicating, or perhaps hadn't taken her full dose that day. Weeks went by. The internet kept buzzing. People developed incredibly detailed theories. One of the strangest ones involved a bizarre coincidence. Around the same time Elisa disappeared, there was a tuberculosis outbreak on Skid Row, right near the Cecil Hotel. The name of the test used for this kind of outbreak, the Lam-Elisa test, that stands for lipoarabinamide enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. The fact that the test name contained Lam-Elisa seemed like an impossible coincidence. People spun theories that she was some kind of biological weapon carrier, that she was being targeted by a secret organization, and that she was murdered to keep her quiet. It sounds like a movie plot, but people were desperate for an explanation that made sense of the strangeness. Another theory pointed to the movie Dark Water. It's a horror film from 2005. In the movie, a mother and daughter move into a creepy apartment building. The water is black and tastes bad. They eventually discover the body of a young girl who drowned in the building's rooftop water tank. The parallels were eerie. The bad water, the elevator scenes, the girl's body in the tank. Some people thought Elisa Lam was reenacting the movie, or that a killer was. The murder theory was the most popular. It was simple. Someone grabbed her, killed her, and hid the body in the water tank. Maybe a hotel guest, maybe an employee. The Cecil had a lot of transient residents. It was a dangerous place. The theory had problems. The autopsy showed no signs of a struggle. It's hard to imagine forcing someone up to the roof, up a ladder, and into a water tank without leaving a single mark on their body. And why hide her there? It was a bizarre, complicated way to dispose of a body. Finally, in June 2013, 4 months after her body was found, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office released its final report. The official cause of death was listed as accidental drowning. They also listed her bipolar disorder as a significant condition. There was no foul play, no murder, no ghosts. It was, according to the law, a tragic accident. For many people, this answer was completely unsatisfying. An accident? How could this possibly be an accident? The locked door, the heavy lid, the nakedness. It just didn't add up. They felt the police had given up, that they were covering something up. But if you look closely at the facts and you understand the nature of severe mental illness, the official explanation starts to seem not just possible, but the most likely scenario. It's a much sadder, less cinematic story than the internet theories, but it's more human. Let's break it down. First, her mental state. Elisa had bipolar I disorder. This is a serious condition that can involve extreme mood swings, from depressive lows to manic highs. During a severe manic episode, a person can experience psychosis. This means they lose touch with reality. They can have hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't there. They can have delusions, believing things that aren't true. A common delusion is paranoia, the intense and irrational belief that you are being followed or that someone is trying to harm you. Now think back to the elevator video. Her behavior, which seems so bizarre and terrifying to a casual observer, is actually consistent with someone having a psychotic episode. Is pushing all the buttons, hiding in the corner, peeking out into the hallway as if someone is chasing her. The strange hand gestures. She might have been hallucinating, she might have genuinely believed someone was after her. She wasn't playing a game, she was terrified, but her fear was likely caused by her own mind. The toxicology report is key. It showed she had her medication in her system, but not very much. It's possible she had stopped taking her pills, or was taking a lower dose. For someone with bipolar disorder, not taking medication properly can trigger a severe episode. Her blog post from just before her trip mentioned a relapse, suggesting she was already feeling unstable. The stress of traveling alone could have made things worse. So, on January 31st, Elisa Lam was likely in the middle of a severe psychotic episode. She believed she was in danger. She was trying to escape. Next, how did she get to the roof? The main door was alarmed, yes, but hotel staff said there were other ways. The fire escape was one, and as for the alarm door, it's not foolproof. An employee could have propped it open. Or, in her manic state, she might have found a way to bypass it. In that state of mind, people can have a kind of frantic energy and determination. It's a stretch, but not impossible. It's one of the weakest links in the story, but it doesn't rule out the accident theory. Once on the roof, what would she see? 4 large water tanks. If you believe someone is chasing you and you are desperate to hide, a water tank might seem like the perfect place. A place no one would ever think to look. In her delusional state, climbing the ladder and getting into the tank might have felt like a rational act of self-preservation. And the nakedness. This seems strange, but there is a phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. It happens with people who are dying of hypothermia. As their body gets dangerously cold, their nerves get confused. They suddenly feel incredibly hot, like they are burning up. In their confusion, they start tearing off their clothes to cool down. The water in the tank on a February night in Los Angeles would have been very cold. It's plausible that as hypothermia set in, she took off her clothes, believing it would help her. This would explain why her clothes were found in the tank with her. She took them off while she was inside. That leaves the biggest question of all, the lid. Everyone assumed it was closed. But was it? The maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, who found her, said in his statement that the lid was open. I noticed the hatch to the main water tank was open, he said. This detail changes everything. It's a piece of information that got lost in the frenzy of online speculation. The media reported body found in sealed water tank, and that image stuck. But the man who found her said the lid was open. If the lid was open, the whole narrative shifts. She could have climbed in, and the lid was never closed. It's possible she couldn't get out. The sides of the tank were high and slippery. The water level might have been too low for her to reach the top. She couldn't swim forever. Eventually, exhausted and hypothermic, she would have drowned accidentally. So here's the most likely story of what really happened to Elisa Lam. On January 31st, 2013, likely suffering from a severe psychotic episode triggered by her bipolar disorder and possibly by not taking her medication correctly, Elisa Lam became convinced she was being pursued. She fled to the elevator, her frantic behavior captured on camera. Desperate to escape her perceived tormentors, she made her way to the roof of the hotel. Seeking a hiding place, she climbed one of the water tanks, lifted the heavy but not impossible lid, and got inside. The cold water quickly began to affect her. As hypothermia set in, she became disoriented and, in a state of paradoxical undressing, removed her clothes. Unable to get out of the high-sided tank, she eventually drowned. The lid remained open until her body was discovered over 2 weeks later. It's not a story about ghosts or conspiracies or government assassins. It's a story about mental illness. It's a story about a young woman who is fighting a terrible disease. A disease that on that day, in that place, tragically won. The internet mystery of Elisa Lam is compelling because it allows for endless speculation. The eerie video, the hotel's dark past, the strange coincidences, they all create a perfect storm for conspiracy theories. It's more exciting to believe in a shadowy killer or a paranormal force than it is to confront the sad, messy reality of mental illness. The case also highlights how we, as a society, often misunderstand mental health. The things Elisa did seemed crazy, or spooky, but to a psychiatrist they are recognizable symptoms of a known illness. Her tragedy wasn't supernatural, it was medical. In the years since her death, the Cecil Hotel has tried to rebrand itself. It is closed and reopened, but it will always be linked to this story, and the story of Elisa Lam continues to fascinate people. It became the subject of documentaries and countless YouTube videos. People are still drawn to the mystery, but it's important to remember that behind the mystery was a real person, a daughter, a student, a writer, a young woman with hopes and fears who was trying her best to navigate the world while carrying a heavy burden. The most haunting part of the Elisa Lam case isn't the elevator video or the dark history of the hotel. It's the thought of her final moments, alone, terrified, and confused in a cold, dark water tank. It was a terrible, lonely way to die, and the real tragedy is that it was probably preventable. It was an accident born from an illness, a sad end to a life that was just beginning. That's what really happened to Elisa Lam. The truth is often not as mysterious as we want it to be, but it can be far more tragic.